Hey guys, I can't wait to hear your story. I just recorded a whole video explaining like what this project is, what I'm looking for, and somehow the video ended up being 6 minutes long. So I'm about to launch into it, but I've sped up the video. I just wanted to warn you because sometimes it can be jarring when you start watching a video and it's like, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's better if it's sped up, so I'm not like wasting your time. Okay. Peace and love. Okay, this is like the third time I've tried recording this. Basically, I just want to give you guys an understanding of why I'm doing this project, why it matters to me, and kind of what I'm looking for in the stories that you guys submit. Ever since I was a wee girl, I have loved listening to a good story. I think there's nothing better than sitting in a room, listening to someone tell a story that they clearly care about, and that is a good story that you're invested in because they're doing a really good job of telling it. I think this probably stems from my mom being a really good storyteller, kind of effortlessly. Like, she doesn't really ever want to claim the center of the attention of a room, but she has some good stories up her sleeve. And actually, if you have been following me on the internet for a while, which if you have, I'm incredibly flattered and thank you for that. But you may recall that my early days on TikTok, I'm talking May 2020, when I downloaded the app, my original content was storytelling content. I was doing makeup story times, if you can believe it. And one of the first stories I told, that was like a part 1, part 2, part 3, because at that point, TikTok only allowed minute-long videos. I told the story of my mom's former landlord, Eve. And I won't get into it now, but basically what you need to know is Eve is kind of a sketchy lady, and the story is it's a bit of a thriller mystery, if you will. Okay, so fast forward to now. Over the past couple months, I have had the blessing of listening to a handful of really phenomenal stories from a couple different friends. And it's just been kind of a reminder to me how a lot of people have really freaking good stories to tell, and a lot of people are really good storytellers. And so in a kind of selfish way, I'm just trying to listen to as many amazing stories as possible because it truly is one of my favorite things to do, is just be a listener and hear a story that's important to someone. So I guess now getting to the point of like what I'm looking for from you guys, if you're submitting a story, I'm not necessarily looking for a story that has like a really juicy hook or even necessarily, like, I guess what would be analogous to like a blockbuster film story. I mean, if you have one of those, awesome, and I would love to hear it. But I'm trying to say is like, I don't want you to be discouraged if you feel like you have a story that feels really important to you, but you don't know if it will land the same way to someone else. I think what makes our story really good, usually, is the storyteller brings us into kind of their inner world. So it requires getting a bit personal, and it requires understanding, okay, what is the mindset of the narrator, you? Because I'm assuming this is a first-person story. It should be, by the way. This should be your story if you're submitting it. And giving people a sense, listeners a sense immediately, okay, what are the stakes, basically? Like, what's going on in your life that makes this, what happened to you, feel really impactful? So I really don't want to give like too strict of parameters, but yeah, I'm just excited to hear your stories. And so you can kind of give a synopsis in the written form here, or I think maybe even better would be making a video like this where you tell the story. And it can be anywhere between like 5 and 20 minutes. I want to make it broad because I know like I personally am a yapper, so when like this video is already getting way too long. So when I start telling a story and I'm in it, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's been 15 minutes. Also, just to give you guys a little more context about like what I'm doing and what this project is, I want to launch a storytelling podcast. So I'm going to select some of y'all's stories and invite you to be on the podcast if that's something you'd be interested in to tell the story on the podcast. I also have a dream of producing a live storytelling show in Brooklyn. So don't worry, like if telling your story live is something that like petrifies you. I personally have such a fear of public speaking, so I totally get it. You are not like beholden to that commitment if you come on the podcast. But yeah, that's kind of like broad strokes of what this project is. It's a very new, like I'm just in the beginning phases of it, so it's just taking shape. But in terms of like what next steps, what next steps would be, I think you would submit your story. I'm going to select some of these stories to be on the podcast, invite some of y'all on the podcast, and then maybe we'd like workshop it a little bit together. And so that when you come on the podcast, you and I have been through the story a little bit together already, and then when you tell it on the podcast, it feels very, I guess, a little more refined. I'm not totally sure that's what the route I want to go, because I do think that there's value in something sounding and being really raw. And if we go on tangents down one road with a certain detail, that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be like a perfect story where every word is like calculated and matters. That's something I still need to figure out, but I'm kind of just, I guess, thinking out loud a little bit here. Anyway, I hope this was helpful information. I didn't give too much information, and this wasn't like boring to listen to, but the short and sweet of it is I want to hear your story. And if you're down, I want you on the podcast. Also, one more thing I want to add. I'm assuming you're submitting a story because you have a really great story you want to tell, and I can't wait to listen to it. But I also want to say that I feel like in all of our lives, we have like that one like aunt or friend, you know, or a relative that has an iconic, I don't know, I just said like that, iconic story. Maybe this person is you, like in which case you are the person with the iconic story. But if there is like someone who really stands out to you, just like right now, that you're thinking of like, oh my God, yeah, that story's crazy. Feel free to also pass this opportunity on to them as well. I obviously want to hear from both of you, but yeah, I just want to say that. Okay, bye.